Hey everybody, this is Matt from the Off-Farm Income Podcast. Thank you very much for being here with me again this week. Well, I'll tell you what, we are going to be talking all about writing articles to support, to promote, to grow and thrive in your agricultural business. Now, last week on Tuesday, episode number 678, I talked all about using LinkedIn to grow your business, and in there I talked about the great article writing function that they've got in LinkedIn, and I wanted to go deeper on that with you, so I decided to do our Tuesday episode this week all about this. Now, for those of you who are joining me on YouTube and watching me record this podcast for the first time, just know that I'm just getting started with YouTube and recording my podcast there. So you're actually not going to find episode number 678 on YouTube. You'll have to listen to that on the podcast itself. You can find that on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, those places. But worth your while checking that one out. But anyway, everybody, I want to talk about why you should write articles to promote your business, to help grow your business. And then I want to give you some techniques on how to do it. And so that's what we're going to do today. So let's start off by just talking about the why. Why would we do that? Now, again, on my last Tuesday episode, I talked about using LinkedIn and this article writing function, which really makes it valuable. And if you want to write anything of substance on LinkedIn, you actually have to write an article anyway because they limit your characters you can use to do a post on LinkedIn. And so you're going to wind up writing an article anyway. But when it comes to marketing your business, there's kind of I guess if you're going to market your business through writing, there's a hierarchy, there's a progression of methods you can use. At the bottom would probably be using Twitter. And so using Twitter to just a little quick 140-character blurb, something like that. Now, not everybody uses Twitter. I've got a Twitter account. I really don't use it that much. I'm certainly not a Twitter expert, but a lot of people have had some really significant success with Twitter. The one that comes to mind the most for me is Rob Sharkey of the Shark Farmer podcast, and now the SiriusXM satellite radio show, Shark Farmer. A great example of a guy who had great success by using Twitter. But really, when you're talking about Twitter, you're talking about probably the bottom when it comes to writing in terms of content and substance that you can put in there. And probably next up on the list would probably be just a regular old post, either on LinkedIn or Facebook or something like that, where you can share a bit more information, but you still really can't quite get into the meat of the subject as deep as you might like to. And then after that would probably be a blog post, like what I write for each podcast episode. I write show notes, but really I'm just saying show notes. It's really a blog post that I write, and I write something to accompany that. So if you ever go over to my website, offincome.com, you'll see that there. And usually blog posts, if you're going to blog exclusively, not as show notes, but you're going to go out there and you're going to try and produce content, everything that I read talks about trying to write blog posts that are like 600 to 800 words. Now, there is no rule. You can do whatever you want, but in terms of successful blog posts, that's what I've read. That may have changed since I read that. But really, in that amount of words, you can kind of develop your ideas better than just a simple post, but you've got to omit quite a bit of detail to keep them to that length and to keep people interested. So there's some give and some take there. Now, after a blog post, in my opinion, comes an article. And I think articles, they can be relatively short to relatively long. That kind of depends on your preference and who you're writing for, if you're going to get it published somewhere other than, say, your own LinkedIn site or something like that. And then after an article is probably like a repeating column, maybe a repeating column, or maybe after that a white paper, and then after that maybe a book. And I'm sure there's a lot more categories that we could come up with here to describe that. But that's kind of the progression. That's kind of the hierarchy of how you would do this. And so for me, I tend to stop at articles. Articles probably is high up in that progression that I go. And, I've got a few thoughts about eventually writing a book, but at this point in time in my career, with as busy as I am with the farm and all of that's going on, having a daughter, a young family, all of that, I'm kind of capped for now at writing articles. I don't think I have the time to invest into a book the way that you would need to write a successful book. Now, with that said, I actually submitted a book proposal to an agricultural publisher this past winter, and it got turned down. So obviously I wasn't that invested in writing a book, because I could have written it anyway and tried to self-publish or then marketed it, but I didn't. But it's something that's on my list, something I want to do at some point, and for me to get as far as submitting a book proposal was pretty good for me. But right now it just seems like writing articles every now and then is about the best that I'm capable of doing right now with the time that I've got and what I'm trying to accomplish. So each of these forms of writing, they can be used to market you, to market your service, or to market your products. And if there's a spectrum of usefulness here in terms of something or how you're going to write these things, I think we'll look at the spectrum. So, for example, on one far end is Twitter. And Twitter is really good for delivering quick information, while on the other end of the spectrum, and I'm using articles as the top end of the spectrum because that's what we're talking about, articles are very good for being able to put a lot more content in and to get published in areas that have a steeper barrier to entry than, say, a Twitter. And so they can help to position you as an expert. So, for example, on Twitter, anybody can form an account, anybody can get on there, and you can say almost anything you want. With no vetting, there's nobody out. There's no gatekeepers. You just get to put it out there. But if you're going to write an article, you're going to get that published, say, in a magazine, a trade magazine or something like that. Someone's going to have to review it and say, yeah, this is worthwhile. We're going to publish this. And so there's a difference there, right? And so an article holds more weight. It carries more weight. Now, on the article publishing function of LinkedIn, if you're going to use that, again, there's no gatekeeper, but you can make those look really good and look really professional, and that's a benefit to doing that as well. So, to me, writing an article, it can serve your purpose a lot better in terms of trying to market your business and position yourself that way. Let me give you an example. If you're using Twitter, or even if you're using like a Facebook post or a LinkedIn post, and you want to link to that to market yourself, to demonstrate your credibility to somebody else, they're not going to see that, right? If you give a hyperlink so somebody can click on it, they can follow the trail on your website to a Twitter post, they're not going to think that means anything. But if they follow it to an article, they certainly might. And so I think that's where it helps to market your business. So this is all well and good, but let's answer this question. So if you're starting a relatively simple business, the same way I did with my first business, then why in the world do you need to do this? Why do you even need to go this far? Well, in my opinion, it all comes down to marketing. It comes down to you building your business. So we'll go way back to when I first started with my gopher extermination business, the very first business that I ever had, and I wrote articles about gophers. That was not easy. Now, I know there's topics out there that are hard to write about. I think gophers are on that list. For me to try and write a compelling article about gophers, I had to really search the recesses of my brain to be able to do that. But ultimately, I did write articles about gophers, and I was able to do that. And really, when I wrote the articles, I still think that the primary benefit was in marketing and was in positioning myself as an expert in my field. But doing the research to write the articles, I definitely learned more about my craft. And so when I had conversations with people later about how I could help them, I knew more. So there was a benefit there. Definitely there is. But my primary goal in doing this was more business. So let me give you an example. I wanted to market to horse people when it came to my gopher extermination business because I thought that would be a good customer subset of people who they might want these gophers removed because gophers are digging these holes. The holes can be invisible to the horses. The horses can step in. They can get injured. People don't want their horses injured, right? So I could follow that. I could follow that path and go, okay, I need to do an article about safety of horses. So I researched, wrote, and submitted my articles. And then I actually submitted one of my articles I wrote to a magazine called The Horse. And I wrote it about burrowing rodents. and how they can be a danger to your horses. So if you want to read that article, it's still up. The magazine is called The Horse. You can Google my name in there, Matt Breckwald and The Horse, or you can go to the show notes for today's episode. I've got a link in here, and you can find that article and give you an example of what I did and what you can do as well. Then on my website and in that article, when I pursued customers who had horses, I would reference this article. So I would send them a link to this article to show I got published in this magazine, or I would send them a link to the social media page or the page on my website where I put this magazine article up. And it was a great way to position myself as an expert, because if you think about it, in this industry, how many other gopher exterminators or gopher trappers do you think were out there who had been published in a trade magazine all about horses, right? I was definitely positioning myself as the expert. So there just wasn't that many other people, and that's really why I was doing it. That was why I was writing the article in the first place. Now let's keep a proper perspective on this really quick. So as we talk about using articles to market your business and to position yourself as an expert, it's important to keep this perspective. Now remember that for so many people out there who are becoming entrepreneurs, who are starting their own businesses, they want to do this for a living, they are doing so to create their own business, and that is the end result. That is what they're pursuing, to have their own business, to work for themselves. But for those of us in this audience, that is not the end result. We are using entrepreneurship to be able to support our farm. So we're choosing entrepreneurship to create our off-farm income in lieu of working a city job, right? And this is supposed to give us the ability to live where we want to live, farm where we want to farm, be on our farm when we need to be there, when we want to be there, and to devote as much time as possible to being on our farm. Because ultimately, that is the goal of doing this. So our goals in entrepreneurship are somewhat different than, say, a traditional entrepreneur who doesn't want to farm, right? That's their top goal. Entrepreneurship, our business in this audience, is our second to top goal. It is a means to an end, and that end is farming. So that is the point of doing this. So please keep this perspective in mind, because the reason I'm bringing this up is I think there's probably some of you going, I'm not going to write articles. I'm not going to do that. Well, writing articles is something that's really going to help your business to succeed by positioning you as an expert and getting more attention for your business from other people. And it also might open up other doors for you, like public speaking and things like that, which can bring additional revenue from off the farm to your farm. So if you're going to use your own business to help you farm effectively and allow you to be on your farm when you need to be there, allow you to get the most productivity out of your small or your growing farm as you can, so ultimately you can become that full-time farmer, or you can maximize that time on the farm, then you need, if the point is to have your farm perform very well, then the point should also be to have your business perform very well, because without the support of your business, all of a sudden that farming endeavor doesn't work. So what I'm saying is, if entrepreneurship is a means to an end, a means to you being able to farm, then article writing is a means to you being able to have a business that will actually support your farm. So this is something that you really, really want to consider. And again, some of us are going to become entrepreneurs so we can farm. It's not that we want to be entrepreneurs. And some of us are going to become article writers so our business can do well. It's not that we want to be article writers. So just keep that proper perspective as we go through this. Okay. So how do you do this? How do you go about writing articles? And I will say this right now. There's going to be a lot more people out there in the world that are better qualified than me to tell you how to do this. However, my job here on the podcast is to try and stay a step ahead of you so I can teach you about things that will help you follow me down this path. And since I've used articles both in my gopher business and now in my broadcasting, my podcasting, my marketing business, whatever you want to call it, I should be a step ahead of you on this path. So let me tell you how I've done it, why I've done it, and kind of how it all works, okay? Because that is what we're here for. Now, if you go out and you start writing articles and you love it, or you're having great success with it, and you go, wow, this is what I want to transform my off-farm income source to. Great, that is awesome. I'm super excited for you. Go out and get better training than you're going to get from me on this, 30-plus minute, maybe 30-plus minute podcast. Go out and get better training than you're going to get from me. But if you're just trying to get started and you're trying to figure out how to write an article, how to market your business and position yourself as an expert through this, then let's talk about that. So let's start first with brainstorming. So when it comes to writing articles, and I mentioned this earlier about when I was writing articles about the gopher business, well, that was a challenge to come up with something I can write about with gophers that would be compelling enough to get people to publish it. Now, again, I could publish my own stuff. I could publish it on my website back then or on my LinkedIn page, and I could link to it through my website. I could still do all of that, but there is a hint of credibility and free publicity if you can get published by somebody else. And I wanted that as well because I wanted to position myself as an expert, and I wanted that credibility of being vetted by a third party, by the publisher of the magazine or whatever that may be. So that meant I had to brainstorm topics about gophers that people might be interested enough to read so they would get published. This is not easy. So let's talk about some examples. So to start off, when you're doing this brainstorming, when you're trying to figure out what to talk about, think about it this way. The moment you start a business and you go into business for yourself and you're trying to get people to give you money for a skill or a product that you've got, you by default are ahead of them. You know more about this industry, about this product, about this service than they do. As long as you're ahead of people, and you know something about something that they want to know about, then you've got something to tell people that they're going to be interested in learning. Not everybody, but a good enough percentage of people that you can market, you can get that article published. So don't convince yourself, oh, I could never be an article writer, I could never get published. No, I think you really could. The fact that you're going to be a business owner in this industry is going to give you the title and the credentials that will allow a magazine or a publisher to go, yeah, we will publish something from you, because they can say you're an industry professional, you're an industry expert, versus you're just some random person off of the street. But you're also ahead of people, and you may even take this for granted. What you know, you may think everybody knows it, because after you get into your business and you start running your business, all of this stuff becomes very elementary. It becomes very easy. But you're seeing multiple different scenarios within your industry on a weekly, daily basis. And so you're seeing a lot more than anybody else ever gets to see, because you've got people from all over your community coming to you with problems they want you to solve for them, whether that's with the product that you're making or with the service that you're providing. So you've got a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of experience. And so what might seem easy to you has a big learning curve for other people, and you can help them out in that learning curve by writing articles. And that's really what you're giving away here. And I say giving away for a reason. Because honestly, you can get paid for writing articles, but that's really not our point here. So for the most part, we're giving away information here because that's going to come back to us in business, in future business later. Okay, so let me use a firewood business as an example. That's a good one that we've profiled on the show several times, and we've talked about people who have businesses either cutting up, stacking, or even selling firewood, whatever that may be. If that is your business, if that is your form of off-farm income, I mean, this is a simple business, right? It's as simple as my first business of gopher extermination, but you're going to know things that maybe other people don't know. Imagine pulling up to a job site or bidding a job and having your potential customer ask you a bunch of questions. Write an article, have that conversation with hundreds of people at once rather than just one person at one time. So if you've got this firewood business as our example, maybe you know what the best types of wood to burn in wood stoves are versus the best type of wood to burn in fireplaces. And I am just brainstorming right here. Or maybe you can talk about how long each type of different wood needs to season before it's ready for consumption. Or maybe you can talk about which type of wood burns cleaner in open air versus closed air systems or catalytic systems or whatever that may be. Or you could talk about which are harder to come by but worth going through the effort to get, whatever that may be. It really doesn't matter what the information is. Just remember that by virtue of operating your own business, that you have become the expert. You know more than the general population. And so when you can brainstorm these topics, these different things to talk about, and you can write 1,200 words, 1,600 words about them, maybe just 1,000, then all of a sudden you can share that for free and you can accomplish this. Okay, so let's say that you've picked your topic. Let's say you've come up with whatever it is, and now it's time to start putting, ink down on paper or however you're going to do it. Fingers on keyboards, I don't know. We're going to start now with outlining. We're going to outline this. And the reason, and this is the way I do it, everybody. Maybe you've got a better way, but this is how I do it. I outline my article before I write it. And the reason I do that is I want it to make sense to the reader. And so I'm kind of reverse engineering this article. I can picture in my mind what I want the end result to look like, and that is an article they read where they get good, useful information that they can use. But for me to write that, I have to start out with an outline, and I have to make this outline chronologically. So I start at the start. So, for example, if you want to write an article, say, about how maybe next winter people can be heating their homes for very little cost with the wonderful smelling aroma of burning cherry wood in their wood-burning stoves. Let's say you, as the firewood business, the forest clearing business, whatever that is, that's the article that you want to write. Okay, so if you're the person who wanted to do this, if you were doing this on your own, what would you do first? In my opinion, that's where you start your article. You may start your article with the reasons why, right? With the reasons why you want to do this. But then eventually you're going to get to what do you do first? And if you're trying to provide good content to people, you're going to want to go there. So maybe you would source the wood first and contact a landowner and come up with some sort of contract so you can remove some of it. Maybe next you got to purchase a chainsaw. Maybe after that, a wood splitter. Maybe after that, a trailer. And you may touch on the new expenses that people are going to incur if they decide to heat this way, but then remind them of the savings that they're going to have over their gas and electric bills and how it's going to pay for itself or whatever that may be. Or you might think of why you are involved in this business and remind your readers of that. Maybe you really like working outdoors in the fresh air. Maybe you like getting that exercise. Maybe you like being self-reliant and the feeling it gives you. And so you put something about that in the article. But you want to build this up chronologically so it's easy for them to follow when you finally write it. Now next, you might talk about how long you would let the wood season before you start splitting. So maybe I've got it out of chronological order when I'm thinking about this because I've already got you buying the splitter, but maybe you want to let it season before you split it. Then you could describe how to build the perfect firewood stack, right? So you got it all split. How do those people that stack firewood so perfectly do it? I've never figured that out, ever, but they do it so good. So you might talk about that. Next might be the best type of wood stove to use to heat your home with, and what part of the house is best to put it in. I mean, maybe you write about that. You might be writing an article for people who are totally converting from, say, electric and gas heat over to wood heat, and so they need even that information. So you're probably getting the point here that an outline is simply just a chronological series of events that make sense, and when you're done writing the article, it should flow together in that way. And so if your reader chooses to follow your advice, they can go step by step, and they can actually accomplish something. So now let's talk about actually writing the article. So now that you've got it outlined, okay, and I know this is quick and dirty, everybody, but now that you've got it outlined, it is time to write it. Okay, so let me give you an example. I was at a wedding over the weekend, just this last weekend. Autumn and I went over to Oregon for a wedding. A gal that we watched grow up and we used to babysit got married. This was a very unconventional wedding. But during the wedding, there were two facilitators to this wedding, or two ordained people. I'm not sure how it all worked. But anyway, one of the two had something written, both about the groom and then about the bride. And he read this whole thing. And it was really well written. Very, very well written. As a speaker, he was pretty good too, but he was reading it off a piece of paper that he had written. And it was very, very well written. And even actually after the ceremony, Autumn and I were talking, and we were like, man, that guy was a good writer. We both had the same thought about this guy separately. He did a wonderful job of painting a beautiful picture with words. I mean, he was just a very, very eloquent writer and could really put his words together very, very well. And I think that people like this, that are very eloquent with their words, they can really intimidate the rest of us who are not. Don't be intimidated by folks who write like this. People that write like this aren't writing articles about how to, harvest and season firewood for the next winter. That's not what these people do. There are all sorts of different writings out there. I met a guy once when we got to talk, and I asked him what he did for a living. He told me he was a technical writer, a term I'd never heard before. So I asked him, what is that? What is a technical writer? And he told me he wrote things like owner's manuals. He wrote things like instructional guides and things like that. His writing wasn't eloquent at all, but it was effective. It taught people things. It showed people how to do things. And again, I'm not an eloquent writer, and I don't try to be. Now, there's a lot of things I don't do very well, and staying within my boundaries is not always one of them. But when it comes to writing, I do think I do pretty good in terms of realizing who I am as a writer and then trying to stay within those boundaries. So I am trying to deliver information that people can use. That's why I write. And for example, what we're talking about today, I wrote this out before I got behind the computer and behind the microphone here and started talking about it. And if there's going to be quality in my writing, it's going to have to be in the content. It's going to have to be in the information that is conveying to the people. I don't expect anybody who is reading what I have written to sit there and to gain some sort of intrinsic pleasure from the way I've put words together. That's just not who I am. That's not where my talent lies. But that does not mean I should not write. I still have something to offer to people, even though that's not the way I write. So don't be intimidated and think, oh man, I could never write like those people. I'm no Shakespeare. It doesn't matter. That's not what we're talking about here. Now, I also try very hard to write in the same way that I talk. And this probably goes back to my law enforcement career, but to me, it seems like I can communicate my knowledge much better that way. So, occasionally, or maybe frequently, I'll end a sentence with a preposition, and I just don't care about it. It's been a long time since I took an English class, and I have no intention of doing that again. Now, one of my weaknesses when it comes to writing is the tendency or the desire to want to use like a $3 word, right? So, you're writing and you're like, oh my goodness, who's going to read this? They're going to think I'm an idiot if I don't use this big word with like 4 or 5 syllables. So I catch myself, and I try and fix that when I do catch myself. So for example, I might say I observed in a sentence, but then I might go back and change that and say I saw, or I watched, or I looked at, whatever fits. To me, I like it better because there's no way for me to come across as pretentious. And by the way, if all my writing is plain and direct, and then I'm throwing in a fancy word here or there, whoever's reading this is like, you're trying too hard, Matt, and that's true. And so I just try and write and be direct. You figure out your own style, but you don't have to be, the Picasso of putting words on paper to write something effective that will position you as an expert and will bring attention to your business. You do not have to do that. Okay, let's talk about publishing really quick. So you've written your article. Where are you going to publish it? Well, you can self-publish, like on a platform like LinkedIn, and man, they do a great job. They really make it look good, especially if you learn how to put some pictures into the article. And I would suggest if you're going to do this, you go out and you actually buy some pictures, like from an iStock photo or a site like that where you can get really high-quality photos, and you can put them in, and you get the copyrights to do that. They look really good as compared to something that maybe you snapped with your iPhone in low light or something like that. But if it's relevant, like when I had the gopher business, I couldn't go out on iStock Photo and find pictures of gopher mounds or damage from ground squirrels in the way I needed to display it. So those are my photos. But it's just going to depend on what it is you're writing and what's available to you. But I suggest putting some photos in there and then learning, like on LinkedIn, how you can wrap words around the photo. I think that's really important to make it look good, look professional. But man, they really do a good job. They have a nice platform and ability there for you to write an article that's professional looking. So do that. The next thing is go out and find some magazines or find some newspapers that are related to your business or to your industry and send the article off to them and see if they'll publish it for you. Man, if they will, it is great free publicity and it gives you tons of credibility. And by the way, magazines and newspapers are always looking for content. Coming up with content is a bear, and coming up with that much content that often, that is tough. So if you can send them something that they believe people are going to read and they're going to get value out of, and they don't have to do anything, they just have to reprint it in their publication, they're probably going to print it. So send it to them. See what happens. I think it's a really good method for you to get that out there. And if you're wondering where you can find magazines that will relate to your industry, start with your local library. Make use of that dusty, wrinkled up library card that you got once for a reason that you can't remember. Talk to somebody in their research department or at their reference desk or something like that and tell them what you want to know. Tell them what you're trying to find out. I am trying to find magazines and newspapers, publications within my field, my area of expertise, or the area of the industry I work under, so I can send articles off to them. They'll have great ideas for you. They'll help you find all sorts of magazines and you didn't even know existed. And I say this because I've done this before and found stuff and I was like, wow, never even heard of this one, but here we go. Send it off to them. So a lot of times, by the way, especially if you're remote, you can do this through the website of your local library, of your library district. So consider doing that. Another thing you can do is you can go get a book like the Writer's Market Guide. So let me read you the exact title of the 2019 edition. Writer's Market Deluxe Edition 2019, the most trusted guide to getting published. I have gotten one of these from the library before. It's a great resource. All the different industry publications are in there, different publishers. If you want to seek a publisher first, you might put it out to different locations. There's a lot of great information in there. There's information on how to write a cover letter, how to write proposals. There's really, really good info in there. Now, you don't have to go to this extent of reaching out to publishers and cover letters and proposals, but at least you can get a list of different trade magazines that are in there. I've linked up to it through my Amazon affiliate link on the show notes. If you want to buy it, please go through the link right there. But if not, just go to your local library and check it out or use it in their reference area. It's a really, really good way to get a look at this. So let me give you one note on submitting articles here. Some publications are going to pay you for your article, or at least they have that's the way they do it. They pay X amount. If you are going to submit to them and you're going to pursue, hey, the double benefit, right? I'm going to get published and get paid for it at the same time. If that's what you're going to try to do, at least give them a chance at exclusive access to your article. Give them a week or 30 days or whatever. Just make it clear when you send it off to them that for the next 14 days or the next 10 business days or whatever, you've got exclusive access to this. If I don't hear from you by then, I'm going to start pursuing other possible publications, but you're my first stop. Because if they're going to pay you for it, you should give them exclusive access. So you should do that. But with that said, don't get distracted by the fact that somebody might pay you for your article. Remember why we're doing this. We're doing this to position ourselves as an expert. We're doing this to grow our business. Those are one and the same. And possibly to open up other opportunities to generate revenue that will support our farms. So remember while we're doing this, and don't get caught up in trying to get paid for these articles. That's not the point. That's just a bonus. That's just icing on top of the cake if that does, in fact, happen. So don't get caught up in chasing that money. That's not what we're doing for a living here, right? We're just doing this to market. But everybody, if you do start getting a few of these things published, and I don't have a ton published. On my LinkedIn page, I have 10 articles that I published. And in different magazines, in newspapers, I've probably got another 10 out there. But I can always send these links off to people. They're topical, and I can always send them, and I can demonstrate that I'm a step above my competition, perhaps. And to me, that's really good for building credibility, and it's really good for positioning yourself as an expert and getting people to trust you, getting them into your sales funnel. So remember, again, our top goal is to be on our farm, to farm successfully, and to maximize our time there. A step down from that is using entrepreneurship, because that's going to give us the best chance. And then a step down from that is what can we do to give our business the best chance of being successful, so it gives us the best chance of success on our farm. And this is one of those methods, absolutely, that will help you. So everybody, I hope that was helpful. That is my intention. But I think you could really benefit from this. If you want my help with this, shoot me an email. I'll let you know what I can, and we'll figure out how to get you helped. But please use this method to help position yourself as an expert, to help grow your business, and to help you farm successfully. This is really what I want. Well, thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you for being part of the YouTube page or the YouTube channel. Really appreciate you watching on here as well. And as always, enjoy your journey to the ultimate lifestyle business, agriculture.